So, welcome everybody. Today, we're going to continue our series on the entrepreneurial excellence. We completed part 5, episode 24, and today we are going to continue with part 6. Now, last week, it took us through uh, what impact demotivation actually has in a business, and made the comment that billions of rands are lost in productivity. And he used the word the hostiles, the functionally or the dysfunctionally disengaged people in the workplace who hates working in in particular your environment. And I just want to recap the 7 areas that it covered. And obviously, you're welcome to go and listen to the YouTube video on the Griffin Enterprise Development channel. And these were as follows. Number one was addressing. So these elements were clarifying expectations to allow people to really align and assimilate and understand what the business is about. So one was centered on clarifying the business etiquette. Number two was use of social media. What is allowed, what is not allowed. How are appraisals done? Are they used functionally? Or are they used as a big stick? Use of company assets. What is expected of employees, and so forth. How do you deal with grievances? And what recourse does an employee have when they're unhappy, basically? And then harassment, sexual or otherwise. And lastly, it ended off with what the business feels in particular concerning office romantic relationships. And so that was really the scope of the last conversation. And let me give a special shout out and welcome to Ed, who is going to take us through today's topic. And Ed, over to you.
Thank you, Jacques. Yeah, we've talked very extensively about staff issues, staff recruitment and retention, and motivation. And just let me recap where this comes from. We started this series by saying there are a number of things that, if you looked at an entrepreneurial business, um, and gave it a tick box of saying what's important in there. And I just picked there are about 8 of these that I chose to say let's examine each one of those and see where how you're doing on it. And just to remind you, the whole idea behind this is that at the end of this, you should have a little tick box which says in each of these headings I rate myself from 1 to 5, like a 1 to 5 star series, and be honest with rating yourself. So as we get towards the end of this series, you would have a map where you would be able to, if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a senior manager in a business, you would be able to rate how your business and you are doing on each of these categories. And then you have a simple task. You look at all the low numbers, and that's where you put your attention. You don't put your focus on all the high numbers because that's where you're doing well already, and that's your comfort zone, and that's where you would naturally incline to put your time because you're great at doing it and you are in your comfort zone. And we love comfort zones. But that shouldn't be where we are working. We should be working on the things we do badly and should do well. So the whole exercise comes out to some kind of a tick box, some kind of a scorecard that allows you to say, okay, that's where I need to focus, and then maybe revisit in a year's time and say, how am I doing now? So the ones that we focused on are brand development and communication, that is, and strategy, and managerial capabilities, just the skills of being managed, of being a manager, and we've handled that one, um, and leadership, and we've handled that one, and customer recruitment and retention. We need to talk to that one. Marketing on and sales, finances, and staff uh, creation and retention, staff attraction and retention, and we've handled that one. And then also communications. So today, what I plan to do is to look at brand. Now, on in the area of the brand, there are many, many books written. There are hundreds and hundreds of websites. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of YouTube videos. Um, there are many, many courses, degrees that you can do uh, in brand development, brand management. I'm not going to try and copy all of that here. That's not the purpose of this series. It's to say, how are you doing in the field of the brand? And I assume if you need the information about brands and what they are and where they come from and how important they are, that you have the sources to go and educate yourself on that. So if we look at the brand as an entity, we say, what is it actually? What does the brand mean? What is it? The logo and the colors and the physical appearance of the business? Is it the mission and vision statement on the wall? Is it the kind of feeling that people have for the business? What is actually a brand? And there are multiple definitions of what is a brand, but most definitions of what is a brand will come down to what is the brand in the eyes of the affected communities, in the affected stakeholders, the customers, the suppliers, the financiers, the service providers, and all of the and the staff and contractors and all of the other people associated with the business. What is it in their eyes? So generally speaking, your brand, somebody internally has to be responsible for it, and that is expressed in the form of a brand statement, which may be a mission statement or a vision statement, something that people can get their minds around, which says that this is what the company stands for. And then the market either believes that or doesn't believe that. So, you know, first tick, how familiar are you with what a brand is and what it should be? And if you're a bit defective, a bit ignorant on that score, go look. There's more material available than you could consume in a lifetime. And then the second tick in the box is who owns it? Who owns the brand? Who determines what the brand is? Let's take some examples from large and prominent organizations in this country. The post office. Who owns the post office's brand? Now, the post office has some very, very pretty branding. Their logo is brilliant. Their colors, the vibrant red and blue and white coloring that is so traditional to postal services worldwide, is absolutely brilliant. Um, their places of business were fairly distinguished. They're not anymore. Um, in good positions where people have had access to them, um, and the person inside the post office who's responsible for the brand might feel fairly satisfied. But to the outside world, the post office is not a very nice place. It's a bit decrepit. It doesn't deliver post anymore. And aside from giving out SASA grants, I think most people would struggle to understand why it's there. and I believe it's now in um curatorship in business rescue. So, question mark, who is the owner of your brand? If you have a very, very narrow target audience, you can maybe talk to them on a one on one basis and become the owner of your brand because you can communicate with them on an individual basis and communicate your brand values with them, and they can communicate their brand impressions with you. So if you're a coach or a mentor, and perhaps even a trainer, you might be able to handle this ownership question directly with your customers and target markets. But for most people, they need to go and do some dipstick research that says, what do people think about us? Who owns this brand? And what do the owners of this brand think it is? And then that takes us to the next point, is who's the curator? Who is responsible for looking after the brand? Who needs to see that the brand is not being perceived in the market the same way as it's being perceived perhaps by the management of the company? Who's the curator of that brand? Typically, it's the marketing director, sometimes the business owner themselves. But it's a big question to ask yourself if you're in a business, is who's actually curating this brand in my business? Am I? And am I doing a good job of it? Or is it somebody else in the business? And what sort of job are they doing of it? Are we really curating our brand? Are we understanding it? Are we setting the rules and saying this is where it should be seen? This is where we should be visible. This is where our message should be. This is how we convey our message out there, our brand message. So curatorship, pretty important. Sadly, often people develop a mission and vision statement, and they develop it over a period of time, and it is word scrutinized to reflect exactly the words that they want to do. And yeah, I've a little cynical about some of these discussions because we find that the lawyers throw rocks at any statement on the basis that you might get sued if you say that and don't do it, and the accountants say you're telling people too much of their business secrets, and the sales team say it doesn't go further enough. We should be more adventurous. Uh, and so on down the line. And so in the end result, we end up with a vastly complicated statement that is anything up to a paragraph long, that hangs on the wall and that nobody in the entire organization would ever remember. That's not what a mission statement should be about. A mission statement should be, this is why we're here. It should be quite comfortable to everyone to say, that's what we do. That's our mission in life. So if you have a look at again, some organizations, and let's just take a few examples. If we look at that wonderful NGO, The Gift of the Givers, I think everyone knows what they do. They look after people in distress. They are there to help whatever the position of the people in distress are. And so there's a mission on its own. You don't have to have a complicated lawyer corrected statement on the wall. The mission statement is perfectly well described. There are many other organizations like it. If we stay in the NGO space and look at the SPCA, they're in animal welfare. And yes, they have lots of different divisions. They're in wildlife and they act for the government and they do shelters and all the rest of the things. But they're in animal welfare and everybody knows they're in animal welfare and all their people know that they're there for the animals. And so their mission is very, very clear. Don't have to have a complicated mission on the wall. How good is your mission? How much do you follow it? Then let's look at the vision. Vision is what you want to be, where you want to go. And once again, I can be a little critical of vision statements because many of them say it is our goal to be the very best producer of muffins in the entire country. Okay, noble vision. How will you know if you are? Who will you be taking out of business if you achieve that? Is your vision statement a realistic one? Or do you just want to make nice muffins that people enjoy? And maybe you're not doing that right now. You're not achieving the right level. So it's an ambition that you have to make lots and lots of muffins and diverse candies or diverse confectionaries to enjoy in the future. Keep it simple. And your vision statement, very important part of your brand. Are you living up to it? Because if you say we aim to be the people who deliver the highest level of customer satisfaction, well, how far are you on that road? Have you looked at that vision statement in the last 5 years? Have you moved towards that vision? If so, by how much? What's measurable? Probably more important than the other ones is the statement of values, what your values are, what your ethics are in the business. Um, and those things are there to remind you as well as the market of what you are supposed to do and make them realistic, please. I just was telling Jacques just before we started this conversation of a photo I'd seen of one of these statement of values that one of the items was um, our employees are our most important asset. And someone had scrawled below that. So why is the MD's luxury car not in the retrenchment queue? Now, you don't want that kind of, you don't want, you're opening yourself up to that kind of target unless you actually mean that value. If you mean that value, then that sort of statement could never be made. So when you strike values like that, be very careful. Make sure they're not wild intense. That would be nice to have, but they're actually the living and breathing things because that's how your brand is going to be judged. Do you walk the talk on what you say you do? If you say we are the most employee friendly company in the country, you need to walk the talk and be the most employee friendly company in the country. If you say our value is to have very high levels of customer satisfaction, and then you cut the budget to your maintenance teams and don't maintain your vehicles so they're always out of order, you are damaging more than just that value statement, you're damaging your brand. How many times, Jacques, have you heard uh, somewhere like a call center or perhaps in a restaurant where service is very poor, response is very slow, and maybe if you make a gentle complaint, they will say, yes, terribly sorry, but we're short on staff right now. And, I remember one time we were in a restaurant and we were getting the most appallingly poor service. It was slow and there was no communication. And then one of our party's dishes was served and nobody else had food on the table for the next 5 minutes. And it was really, really poor. And eventually I managed to get one of the managers and said, what's going on here? This is very poor service. I'm very unhappy. And he said, yes, sir, I'm terribly sorry, but we're very short staffed tonight. One of our chefs is on leave, and he had a whole raft of excuses. And I said to him, "Why do you tell me that now when I complain? Why don't you say that when we come into the restaurant? Say, sorry guys, tonight we're a bit short staffed. One of our chefs is on leave. Um, Service will not be at our normal level. Is that okay, or do you want to go somewhere else?" Then I've got the choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or he can say, "Tonight we have a special menu with these prices on because we're not giving you our normal standard of service."
Mm.
But just to put his problems on my shoulders was unacceptable. Now that's repeated over and over again. It's a stock phrase in every call center. "You have called us at a time of very high call volumes."
You are
That's
number 500 in the queue.
that's the kind of phrase that gets stuck in there along with the advertising. I mean, whether you got one caller on the line or 17,000,
Yeah.
that phrase goes in there. So if it's a very busy time, why haven't you got more call center operators
Mm.
on the phones? Your values need to reflect what you actually do, because that affects your brand. And then how do you actually communicate these things? Like the restaurant manager, the communication is often extremely poor. And after the event, it's in the sense of answering a complaint, rather than highlighting features or deficiencies up front. How do you communicate your brand values? How do you communicate what you are? How do you communicate what customers can expect from you to the marketplace? Is it in your advertising? Is it reflected in your social media? Is it reflected in policy documents? Is it reflected by your staff's attitude? Is it affected? Is it communicated by walking the talk, by just doing what you're saying you're doing? Teddy Roosevelt used to famously say, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." And I think that's a wonderful motto for life. Don't shout about what you're going to do, just go and do it. People will, people will see you doing it, and they will reflect on it. Many of the great captains of sporting teams have this mannerism. They don't speak a lot, but they just do, and people follow their leadership, and they make great captains. So, how do you communicate? Who do you communicate to? Um, who needs to know about this? Clearly, your customers and potential customers, and the marketplaces where you might find your customers need to know about these statements. So you need to be targeting messages about your brand into that area. But also, there's a whole lot of others. There's your stakeholders, your suppliers, your auditors, your lawyers, your IT guys, your everything else associated with your business, and most of all, your own staff. How many times do we see staff members who have not the foggiest idea of why they are there? And they are interfacing with customers. Now, they might be low level, they might be delivery people, they might be receptionists or telephonists, and they have no idea what the business is there for, what it stands for, and why it is there. And if so, and they are often the point at which people take their anger out when something goes wrong, because they are in contact and they have no idea what to say or do other than to say, "I am sorry." No sense in you being sorry. Somebody else needs to be sorry. So who do you communicate with, and how? And once again, are you walking the talk? Are you actually putting into place what your brand values say your company will put into place? And then, very much lastly, how are you sure that that is so? How good are you at measuring whether your brand values are actually being achieved and are understood by the market and are accepted by the market. How do you do that? Specific research, maybe, yes. Not the kind of, please take 5 minutes to answer um, uh, this questionnaire. And the questionnaire is so designed that whatever you answer the questionnaire, it will be deemed to be in the favor of the company. That's not the way to do it. A lot of people do that. It's a silly way of doing it. It's answering your own questions with your own answers because you design what the questions are, and the people actually want to respond in different ways. And then you give them a general comment section, and it seems in most cases that nobody responds to that if you are critical in that comment section. So if you're going to do questionnaires, do it through independent marketing research houses and get that done. Or just go and talk. Talk to your customers, talk to people in the marketplace, go and talk at events, and invite people to take it out on you, to express their angers. That's the way you will really feel it when you are among the people who should be a part of your brand values. Jacques, I think that's about what we can say on this topic for now.
Yep, Ed, thank you very much. It just reminds me of a little model that normally runs in my head. And as you were talking around this issue of brand and this and really the scope of it, then is it's like this virtuous cycle of understanding that you ask the question, what is it that you want to be, which is captured within your mission, vision, and value statement. The key thing there, and what you ended up saying here, is what impression and or image do you actually have? What is the experience of the people that are actually using your particular service or product? And then coupled to all of this, and I think of it as a virtuous cycle. Everything has to flows within each one of these things, because in the end there's the theoretical part and then there's the practical part, which is the last one, which is the identity. How do your stakeholders also identify with your profile? What is it? What are their impressions of you? Because in the end, that is what drives your profile, which drives the impressions in in the marketplace as well. So that's kind of just the little thing that's been running around. And I think, okay, what you're saying is I can put it on this little framework that's running in my head. Very brilliant.
And so sadly, I won't be on Clubhouse next week, but we'll see you the week after next.
Excellent. Yes, Ed, we look forward to that. We look forward to continuing with this series, because it's really building brick by brick into the structure it needs to become. And it needs a roof at the end of it so that we can all live in it consistently and with great return on investment in the way we think and what we do. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. And as usual, you're quite welcome to go listen to just the playback, or you can go and visit the Griffin Enterprise Development YouTube channel for our edited version of our audio recording. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good evening until we chat again in 2 weeks' time.
Cheers.